The wind cut through the frozen plains like a living blade, carrying the scent of ice, snow, and distant prey. Endless white stretched in every direction, broken only by jagged cliffs and the occasional silhouette of a towering glacier. This was a world where beauty and danger coexisted in a delicate, terrifying balance. For the humans who called this frozen wilderness home, every step, every breath, and every movement carried consequences. To survive here meant understanding the landscape in ways that modern humans can scarcely imagine. The cold was not just an environmental challenge. It was an invisible predator, ever-present and unforgiving. Frostbite could claim a finger in minutes, and hypothermia crept silently through the body, often before its victims realized the threat. Yet within this frozen desolation, life persisted. Early humans, with their sharp instincts and emerging intelligence, learned to navigate these treacherous conditions. They observed the migration of animals, tracked the shifting patterns of snow and ice, and discovered the subtle signs of danger hidden beneath the frozen surface. Nights were the most perilous. As the sun dipped below the horizon, temperatures plummeted and the comforting warmth of the day vanished, leaving only the bitter chill and the distant howls of predators. Fires, if lit, offered fleeting protection, their flickering glow a fragile barrier against the encroaching cold. In those moments, cavemen lived in a constant tension between safety and exposure, between warmth and freezing death. The frozen landscape shaped every aspect of daily life. Food had to be hunted, gathered, or stored before the snow made survival even more precarious. Rivers froze, forests were buried under layers of snow, and the movements of prey animals became harder to predict. Humans adapted, not through brute strength alone, but through careful observation, cooperation, and ingenuity. They learned to use natural shelters, such as caves, to shield themselves from the worst of the storms. They fashioned rudimentary tools and clothing to retain body heat and protect themselves from the elements. Even the simplest actions, starting a fire, gathering wood, or keeping watch during the night, could determine whether a family survived a winter or succumbed to it. Despite the harshness of the environment, there was a profound rhythm to life in these frozen lands. Early humans understood the cycles of nature intimately. When the herds would migrate, when rivers would freeze, when the wind would change direction. Every season brought its own set of challenges and strategies. Winter, with its deep snow and relentless cold, demanded ingenuity and courage unlike any other season. It was a time of scarcity, risk, and heightened vigilance. A misstep could lead to starvation, a deadly encounter with a predator, or the loss of shelter. But it was also a time that forged resilience, ingenuity, and community, qualities that would define the survival of the species. Even within the small confines of a cave or a temporary shelter, the world outside was never fully tamed. Snowstorms had buried a landscape in hours, transforming familiar surroundings into an alien and threatening expanse. Predators, adapted to the cold, prowled the edges of human camps, sensing vulnerability. Fires, carefully maintained, were both lifeline and risk, providing warmth and cooked food, yet attracting attention from animals or rival human groups. Every action carried weight. Every choice could tip the balance between life and death. In these frozen nights, the simplest luxuries, a dry patch of ground to sleep on, a fire to ward off the cold, a piece of meat from a successful hunt, became monumental victories against a merciless environment. It was a world of contrasts. Brilliant, glittering snowfields versus the shadows of jagged ice cliffs. The warmth and security of the fire versus the deadly cold of the night. The companionship of the group versus the isolation of a single human lost in the storm. These contrasts were not merely physical but psychological, shaping the mindset of early humans. Fear and awe, hope and desperation, courage and caution coexisted in every moment of survival. Each day and night in the Ice Age was a story of endurance, a narrative of life teetering on the edge of extinction, yet persistently pushing forward. This frozen world, dangerous yet mesmerizing, set the stage for every survival strategy that followed. The lessons of observing nature, maintaining warmth, hunting strategically, and building social cohesion were born here, under the shadow of glaciers and the whisper of icy winds. Every innovation, every risk taken during those coldest nights was a step toward mastering the environment, toward transforming fear into knowledge, and toward shaping the very essence of what it meant to be human. In the cold, silence ruled. Snow muffled sound, creating a deceptive calm. The faint crack of ice underfoot, the distant roar of a predator, the subtle movement of prey, all demanded constant vigilance. Life and death were separated by the thinnest margins, and the first steps toward winter survival were grounded in perception, patience, and unrelenting awareness of the natural world. For early humans, these frozen nights were more than a test of endurance. They were the crucible in which intelligence, community, and resilience were forged. The Ice Age was not a single static period, but a series of climatic shifts, each reshaping the planet in dramatic and often unpredictable ways. Vast glaciers crept southward, swallowing forests, rivers, and plains under layers of ice that could be hundreds of meters thick. Sea levels dropped as massive amounts of water became locked in ice, creating land bridges that allowed humans and animals to migrate across continents. The climate was mercilessly cold, yet punctuated by brief interludes of relative warmth. These fluctuations forced early humans to adapt constantly, to develop strategies not just for survival, but for thriving in an environment that could change overnight. Geography played a crucial role in determining the lives of prehistoric humans. Mountain ranges, valleys, frozen rivers, and coastal regions each presented unique challenges. For example, high-altitude regions offered some natural shelter from predators, but exposed humans to harsher winds and thinner air. Coastal areas provided access to fish and marine mammals, yet isolating waters and storms created hazards that could easily prove fatal. Even seemingly small environmental differences, such as the orientation of a slope or the density of forest, could determine whether a human group survived a winter or perished under the cold. Understanding these landscapes was a matter of life and death, requiring observation, memory, and the ability to predict patterns in an otherwise chaotic world. Ice and snow shaped the very behaviors of humans and animals alike. Herd animals, such as mammoths, reindeer, and bison, moved in response to seasonal food scarcity, creating predictable but dangerous patterns that hunters could exploit. Carnivorous predators, from wolves to saber-toothed cats, learned to navigate snow and ice with ease, turning even familiar terrain into a trap for the unprepared. Cavemen had to develop strategies to track prey without becoming prey themselves, learning to read footprints in snow, to recognize frozen scents in the wind, and to anticipate the movement of both animals and other humans. In many ways, the Ice Age was a game of prediction and perception, where failure to notice the subtlest signs could mean instant death. Winter brought challenges that went beyond the cold itself. Water sources froze, making hydration difficult and dangerous. Food became scarce, forcing humans to ration supplies carefully or embark on risky hunts. Storms could last for days, erasing tracks, disorienting travelers, and burying shelters under feet of snow. The psychological strain was immense. Humans had to contend not only with physical suffering, but also with anxiety, fear, and the constant awareness of mortality. Every winter was a test of endurance, pushing mental and physical limits in ways that modern humans can hardly imagine. Yet amidst these trials, humans displayed remarkable ingenuity. In regions with frequent blizzards, groups developed shelters that utilized natural windbreaks or the insulating properties of snow and rock. They learned to preserve food for long periods, using drying, smoking, or burying techniques that protected supplies from freezing or spoiling. Clothing made from animal hides and furs became essential, with layers providing insulation while allowing mobility. Even the placement of fire required careful planning, as smoke could attract predators, but warmth was essential for survival. Each innovation was a response to specific environmental pressures, a testament to human adaptability. Migration was often a necessary strategy. The harshest winters could decimate local resources, forcing groups to travel hundreds of kilometers in search of more hospitable lands. These journeys were perilous, exposing humans to new predators, unfamiliar terrain, and extreme weather conditions. Crossing frozen rivers or glaciers required courage and calculation, as misjudging the ice thickness could be fatal. Yet migration also offered opportunities. New hunting grounds, better shelter, and potential encounters with other human groups that could lead to alliances or conflicts. The Ice Age was as much a story of movement and exploration as it was one of survival in a static location. Geography also dictated social organization. Groups in resource-rich valleys could sustain larger populations, allowing for more complex social structures and cooperative hunting strategies. In contrast, those in barren highlands had to remain mobile, maintaining smaller, tightly knit groups that could respond quickly to environmental threats. The size and cohesion of a group could directly influence winter survival, shaping decisions about who hunted, who gathered, and how food and warmth were shared. These social structures were not just cultural. They were evolutionary responses to environmental pressure. Adaptation was evident in the very psychology of humans living under Ice Age conditions. Risk assessment, patience, and observation became essential cognitive tools. Humans learned to anticipate storms, to recognize dangerous terrain, and to calculate the potential success of hunts. Fear was not only a reaction but a survival mechanism, guiding decisions that balanced immediate needs with long-term safety. In this way, the environment shaped not just physical survival, but the development of intelligence, foresight, and strategic thinking. The Ice Age also forced humans to understand their relationship with other species. Large herbivores were primary sources of food, clothing, and tools, yet they were elusive and dangerous. Predators were constant threats, and competition with other human groups over scarce resources could lead to conflict. Every interaction with the natural world was a negotiation for survival, and understanding animal behavior became a critical skill. Humans had to recognize patterns in movement, feeding, and seasonal migration to maintain an advantage, turning observation into both science and art. The harsh climate amplified contrasts in daily life. Moments of safety inside a well-constructed shelter could be juxtaposed with the peril of a sudden snowstorm outside. Success in hunting brought warmth, nourishment, and relief, while failure could mean hunger and exposure. These extremes defined a rhythm of life, shaping stories, rituals, and behaviors that would endure across generations. The Ice Age was not merely a period of cold. It was a crucible in which humans were forged, developing the resilience, ingenuity, and social cohesion that would become hallmarks of the species. Even the physical landscape told stories of survival. Glacial moraines, frozen rivers, and snowdrifts were not merely obstacles. They were markers that humans learned to read. A frozen river could indicate water sources, animal tracks, or safe passage. A ridge of snow might hide shelter or reveal the presence of predators. Humans developed an intimate understanding of these features. Their survival depended on the ability to interpret the environment correctly. Each winter, every journey, and every hunt became a lesson in reading the frozen world, translating the silent language of ice and snow into life-saving knowledge. The Ice Age context created both a stage of extreme adversity and an arena of human ingenuity. It demanded adaptation, observation, and cooperation. It forced humans to develop tools, clothing, shelters, and strategies that would leave lasting legacies. The frozen landscapes tested the limits of endurance and intelligence, setting the conditions for many of humanity's earliest technological, social, and cultural breakthroughs. Without the pressures of climate and geography, many innovations that seem remarkable today might never have arisen. In understanding the Ice Age, we glimpse not only the hardships faced by prehistoric humans, but also the remarkable ways in which they overcame them. It was a world where life teetered constantly on the edge, yet humans found ways to survive, adapt, and thrive. The frozen environment, in its beauty and cruelty, shaped not only human behavior, but the very trajectory of evolution, laying the foundation for survival strategies that would echo through millennia. Cavemen faced the winter not only as a battle against the environment, but also as a test of their own physical and mental capacities. Their bodies, though strong and resilient compared to modern humans, were still vulnerable to the extreme cold of the Ice Age. Survival required more than instinct. It demanded an intimate understanding of their own physiology. Their physical traits, shorter, stockier builds in northern populations, muscular frames, and naturally higher metabolisms, provided some resistance against freezing temperatures. Yet these adaptations were never perfect. Frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion were constant threats, and even the hardiest individuals could succumb without proper shelter, clothing, and sustenance. One of the most crucial adaptations was body fat, which served as insulation against the bitter cold. Seasonal accumulation of fat was vital. Humans needed to consume enough calories during milder months to store energy for the harsh winter ahead. Fat not only provided warmth, but also served as an energy reserve when food was scarce. However, too little fat meant vulnerability, and too much could impede mobility, affecting hunting and escape from predators. This delicate balance of nutrition, metabolism, and activity was a constant factor in winter survival, demonstrating how intimately early humans' bodies were tied to the environment. Hair and skin played similarly critical roles. Thick hair on the head, neck, and sometimes on the body helped reduce heat loss, while darker skin pigmentation provided some protection against cold-induced skin damage and the rare but essential exposure to sunlight for vitamin D synthesis. Extremities, however, were most vulnerable. Fingers, toes, ears, and noses were at high risk of frostbite, and the loss of even a single digit could impair hunting and survival. Cavemen developed strategies to protect these vulnerable areas, from fur coverings to constant movement and rotation of body parts during long hours outdoors. Every aspect of physiology was both a tool and a limitation in the fight against winter. Metabolism was another critical factor. High-calorie diets were not merely beneficial, they were essential. Hunting and consuming large herbivores provided the energy needed to maintain body heat and physical activity during the coldest months. Yet acquiring sufficient food was never guaranteed. Starvation could weaken the body, reduce resistance to cold, and create a vicious cycle of vulnerability. Early humans had to balance exertion with conservation, understanding when to risk a dangerous hunt and when to conserve energy within the safety of a shelter. Their survival depended on a constant awareness of their own physical state, a lesson modern humans rarely have to contemplate in daily life. Stamina and endurance were also evolutionary necessities. Winter survival often required long treks through snow, the dragging of heavy carcasses, and extended periods without rest. The human body's capacity to store energy, regulate temperature, and recover from exertion was tested daily. Even sleep, vital for recovery, became a strategic challenge. Cavemen had to balance rest with vigilance, ensuring that at least one member of a group remained alert to predators or weather changes. The physiological demand of winter was not only about strength or fat reserves. It was a continuous negotiation between energy intake, exertion, and the ever-present threat of exposure. Cold exposure also shaped behavior in profound ways. Shivering, a natural response to generate heat, consumed energy but was necessary to maintain core temperature. Hypothermia, often gradual, could dull perception and motor skills, lead to accidents, falls, or poor decisions at increased risk. Early humans developed behavioral adaptations to counter these risks, such as huddling together for warmth, using fire strategically, and planning activities during periods of daylight when temperatures were slightly higher. Awareness of one's own body signals, numbness, tingling, fatigue, became as critical as reading the landscape or tracking prey. The limits of human physiology were further tested by psychological stress. Cold, hunger, and the constant threat of predators created intense anxiety and heightened alertness. Fear was a survival mechanism, sharpening senses and promoting caution. Yet chronic stress could also weaken the immune system, impair judgment, and exacerbate fatigue. Cavemen had to balance fear with rational decision-making, a delicate mental calibration that often determined whether they survived or perished. Mental resilience became as important as physical resilience, and social cooperation frequently served to mitigate individual psychological strain. The interplay between physical capability and social structure was vital. Humans did not face the Ice Age alone. Cooperation amplified survival potential. Hunters worked together to bring down large prey, while others maintained fires, shelters, and food stores. The body's capabilities were maximized within the framework of group dynamics. Individuals with acute observation skills, stamina, or tool-making ability became invaluable, and the group's survival often depended on recognizing and utilizing these strengths. Physiology and social structure were intertwined. One could not survive without the other, especially during the harshest months. Seasonal adaptation also influenced reproductive strategies. Winter was a particularly dangerous time for infants and the elderly, whose physiological resilience was lower. Groups often timed births or resource-intensive activities to coincide with periods of relative abundance, ensuring higher survival rates. Nutritional and physical preparation before winter was essential for pregnant women and nursing mothers, who required extra calories and warmth. The survival of the next generation was not incidental. It was a direct outcome of understanding and respecting the limitations of human physiology. Even injuries were magnified by winter conditions. A broken bone, infection, or deep cut could become life-threatening in freezing temperatures, when mobility and immune response were compromised. Cavemen had improvised treatments using herbs, animal fats, and primitive bandaging, often relying on group support to compensate for physical incapacitation. Every aspect of the body, its strength, endurance, vulnerabilities, and adaptability, was tested continuously, emphasizing precarious balance between human resilience and the unforgiving Ice Age environment. Ultimately, cavemen's physiology was both a battlefield and a tool set. Evolution had provided certain advantages: strength, fat insulation, endurance, and acute senses. Yet these were only effective when combined with knowledge, strategy, and social cooperation. The human body was never a passive recipient of environmental pressures. It was an active participant in survival, responding, adapting, and sometimes failing. Understanding physiology was inseparable from understanding the Ice Age itself. Without insight into their own physical limits, early humans could not have survived the relentless winters that defined their world. The harsh winter environment forced humans to constantly adapt their behavior, diet, and social interactions according to their body's capabilities. Every action, from hunting to shelter building to movement across frozen terrain, required calculation and awareness. The story of human physiology in the Ice Age is a story of constant negotiation between vulnerability and capability, between the body's natural resilience and the ingenuity required to survive beyond instinct. It is a testament to the remarkable adaptability of our species, and a reminder that survival in extreme conditions is as much about understanding oneself as it is about mastering the environment. Fire was more than a tool for warmth. It was the lifeblood of Ice Age survival, the line that separated life from death in a frozen world. The discovery and control of fire marked one of humanity's most profound evolutionary leaps. Before fire, cavemen were at the mercy of the elements, exposed to freezing nights, predatory animals, and the scarcity of cooked food. But with fire, they gained not only heat but a means to expand their active hours, preserve food, and create a central hub for social interaction. Fire transformed the environment into something humans could negotiate, even in the deadliest cold, and became a symbol of both ingenuity and hope. The process of making and maintaining fire was itself a skill practice. Sparks could be generated by striking flint against stone or by using friction methods like the hand drill or bow drill. Collecting tinder, dry moss, grasses, or fibrous bark required knowledge of local flora, while kindling needed to be carefully arranged to catch the first fragile spark. Once ignited, a fire demanded constant attention. Wind, snow, and damp conditions could easily extinguish it, and a fire loss could mean freezing exposure within minutes. Mastery of fire was therefore a matter of survival, a skill that was taught, shared, and refined within communities, demonstrating the intersection of knowledge, social learning, and physical necessity. Fire was crucial for warmth, the most immediate and life-preserving function. Nights in the Ice Age could plummet to temperatures well below freezing, and the human body could not survive prolonged exposure without protection. Fires provided localized heat, creating safe zones where humans could gather to rest, eat, and recover from the cold. They also allowed humans to extend their activity into hours that would otherwise have been dominated by darkness and freezing temperatures. Around the flickering glow of flames, groups could maintain vigilance, rotate sleeping positions to conserve heat, and offer protection to the most vulnerable members, such as infants and the elderly. Fire turned the night from a period of vulnerability into a controlled environment where survival was possible. Beyond warmth, fire revolutionized the way humans process food. Cooking meat, roots, and tubers made nutrients more digestible, calories more accessible, and food safer to eat by killing harmful bacteria and parasites. This nutritional advantage was particularly critical during the winter months, when calories were scarce and energy demands were high. Fire enabled humans to transform raw, hard-to-digest foods into edible, energy-rich sustenance, giving them the endurance needed for long hunts, travel, and labor-intensive tasks like building shelters. A well-maintained fire could literally fuel survival, turning raw energy from nature into a reliable source of human vitality. Fire also played a critical defensive role. Predators, from wolves to saber-toothed cats, were instinctively wary of flames. A well-placed fire could create a protective perimeter around a shelter, deterring nighttime attacks and giving humans a psychological edge over animals. In some cases, humans even use fire strategically in hunting, driving prey toward traps or into areas where the hunters had the advantage. Fire became not only a means of surviving the cold, but also a tool to manipulate and control the natural world, a method of asserting dominance in a landscape where humans were otherwise vulnerable. The social significance of fire cannot be understated. A fire was a gathering point, a place where stories were told, knowledge was shared, and bonds were strengthened. Around its warmth, humans could teach hunting strategies, survival techniques, and the location of safe routes through snow-laden terrain. This central hub reinforced social cohesion, which was itself critical for survival. Communities that could maintain and protect a fire were more likely to thrive, while those that failed to do so risked fragmentation, exposure, and eventual demise. Fire, therefore, was not merely physical sustenance. It was social and cultural sustenance, an anchor in a perilous world. Maintaining a fire required resourcefulness. Fuel had to be gathered constantly, often from frozen forests or snow-covered plains. Dried what was precious, and even small miscalculations could extinguish a flame at the worst possible moment. Humans developed techniques to shield fires from wind, build hearths that retained heat efficiently, and even store embers for later use. In some regions, underground fires were used in snow shelters to maximize heat while minimizing smoke inhalation. These innovations illustrate the human capacity to adapt tools and techniques to the environment, using fire not just as a weapon against cold, but as a sophisticated technology of survival. The psychological comfort provided by fire was equally important. In the darkness of winter, fear was a constant companion. Fear of predators, of storms, of isolation, and of death. Fire created a psychological buffer, a circle of light and warmth that reassured the mind as much as the body. The flickering flames were not merely functional. They were symbolic, representing security, community, and the possibility of life continuing despite overwhelming odds. For early humans, fire was a tangible manifestation of hope in an otherwise indifferent world, a reminder that intelligence and cooperation could bend nature to human will, at least temporarily. Fire also shaped the nocturnal rhythm of life. Humans could venture out in the twilight and return before darkness fully enveloped the landscape. Fires allowed people to plan tasks around warmth, visibility, and protection. Nighttime hunting, guarding, and communal activities were all possible because humans had mastered the management of fire. It extended the boundaries of time itself, turning the night from a purely dangerous period into one where strategy, observation, and preparation could be carried out safely. Yet fire was not without risks. Smoke could reveal a group's location to predators or rival humans. Sparks could ignite accidental blazes in forests or grasslands, destroying resources and threatening lives. Managing fire required constant vigilance, a keen understanding of environmental conditions, and coordination among group members. The very element that protected humans from death could just as easily contribute to it if mishandled, underscoring the delicate balance between mastery and hazard that characterized survival in the Ice Age. In sum, fire was a keystone of Ice Age survival, influencing nearly every aspect of human life. It provided warmth, nourishment, defense, social cohesion, and psychological security. It extended the day, enabled technological progress, and allowed humans to exert a measure of control over a hostile environment. Without fire, cavemen would have been far more vulnerable to the freezing nights, predatory animals, and resource scarcity that defined their world. With it, they transformed the impossible into the achievable, carving out spaces of safety, community, and opportunity amidst a frozen wilderness. The mastery of fire was not merely a technical skill. It was a triumph of cognition, cooperation, and foresight. It illustrated the intersection of physiology, social structure, and environmental understanding. Every spark struck against stone, every ember nurtured into flame, and every fire carefully tended was a testament to human ingenuity. In the darkness of Ice Age winters, fire became more than survival. It became a symbol of human resilience, intelligence, and the unyielding will to endure. Winter survival in the Ice Age demanded more than fire, food, and clothing. It required a place to call safe, a shelter that could shield humans from wind, snow, and predators. The landscape itself dictated the possibilities. Natural formations such as caves offered immediate protection, but they were not always available or sufficient for large groups. Early humans had to innovate, combining natural features with constructed materials to create shelters that could withstand blizzards and sub-zero temperatures. The ingenuity required to build and maintain winter shelters reveals both the resourcefulness and the desperation inherent in survival. Caves were the most reliable form of natural shelter. They provided insulation against a freezing wind, protection from snow accumulation, and a relatively stable internal temperature compared to the outside environment. However, not all caves were safe. Predatory animals often sought refuge in the same spaces, and the proximity of large mammals could pose significant threats. Early humans had to carefully choose which caves to inhabit, often relying on signs such as the absence of recent predator activity, the presence of old fire pits, or the layout of the cave itself. Even within a cave, a poorly chosen location could expose individuals to falling rocks, flooding from melting snow, or cold drafts. Where caves were scarce, humans constructed shelters from wood, stone, and animal hides. Huts, often framed with branches or bones, were covered with layers of hides to retain heat. Snow itself became a valuable building material in some regions. Igloo-like structures and packed snow walls provided insulation and windbreaks. These shelters were temporary yet sophisticated, demonstrating a deep understanding of materials, structural stability, and the thermal properties of natural resources. The design of these shelters often reflected the balance between portability and protection, as groups needed to move in search of food or safer conditions. Insulation was critical. Early humans understood that trapping heat was as important as generating it. Floors were lined with layers of leaves, moss, or animal furs to reduce contact with the freezing ground. Walls and roofs were constructed to minimize gaps, preventing draft from undermining the shelter's warmth. In some cases, they built windbreaks using snow, ice, or stacked stones to create microenvironments that allowed small groups to survive extreme storms. These innovations reveal a sophisticated knowledge of physics and environmental interaction, even without formal education or scientific terminology. Every design choice had immediate survival consequences. The internal layout of shelters also reflected human adaptability and social organization. Fires were positioned to maximize heat distribution, while minimizing smoke inhalation and risk of accidental ignition. Sleeping areas were often tiered or rotated to conserve warmth, with communal huddling providing shared body heat during the coldest nights. Storage areas for food, tools, and furs were incorporated into the shelter design, ensuring that essential resources were kept safe and accessible. This careful planning illustrates that early humans were not only reactive but proactive, anticipating needs and environmental changes before they became life-threatening. Selection of a shelter site was equally strategic. Proximity to water and food sources was vital, yet shelter also needed to be protected from avalanches, flooding, and predator access. Elevated positions offered visibility and security, while valleys and forested areas provided wind protection and concealment. Human groups likely scouted multiple locations, evaluating trade-offs between safety, accessibility, and resource availability. These decisions were critical, as a wrong site could expose inhabitants to the full force of winter storms or the approach of dangerous predators. Survival depended as much on choosing the right place as on constructing the right shelter. Seasonal considerations influenced shelter design. During the harshest months, shelters had to withstand prolonged storms, heavy snowfall, and freezing temperatures. During milder periods, structures could be more temporary and mobile, reflecting the need to follow migrating herds and changing environmental conditions. The ability to adapt shelter design to seasonal shifts demonstrates not only physical ingenuity, but also planning and foresight. Early humans understood that survival was not a single task, but an ongoing process, requiring continuous assessment and adjustment. Fire integration within shelters was a delicate balance. While essential for warmth and cooking, fire produced smoke that could accumulate in poorly ventilated spaces. Early humans solved this by creating chimneys, smoke holes, or partial openings to allow ventilation while retaining heat. The careful management of fire inside shelters demonstrates an advanced understanding of both the environment and the behavior of materials. Improper placement or neglect could result in suffocation or accidental fires, underscoring the high stakes of winter survival in enclosed spaces. Shelters were also sites of social life, not merely survival. Communal areas within caves or constructed huts provided spaces for storytelling, teaching, and planning. Knowledge of hunting strategies, tool-making techniques, and fire management was shared around the central hearth. These spaces reinforced social cohesion, which was essential for survival during long, harsh winters. A well-structured shelter supported both physical and psychological needs, helping reduce stress, fear, and the mental strain of enduring extreme cold. Predators and rival human groups further shaped shelter strategies. Caves or huts near high-traffic animal routes could provide hunting advantages, but also risked attracting dangerous wildlife. Concealment and camouflage became important considerations, with shelters positioned to remain inconspicuous. In some cases, human groups may have reinforced entrances with stone or thorn barriers to deter intruders. The constant awareness of external threats demonstrates that shelter construction was as much about defense and survival psychology as it was about insulation and warmth. Mobility played a role in shelter design. Groups often needed to relocate to follow migrating prey or escape deteriorating weather conditions. Temporary shelters, constructed quickly from available materials, allowed flexibility without sacrificing protection. Some groups may have maintained semi-permanent bases during milder seasons, returning to these structures annually. This balance between permanence and mobility illustrates strategic thinking, showing that early humans were not passive victims of the environment, but active participants in shaping their survival landscape. The effectiveness of a shelter could mean the difference between life and death. Even a minor flaw, a gap in insulation, an exposed entrance, or poorly positioned fire, could lead to frostbite, illness, or exposure. Shelters were carefully observed, maintained, and improved over time, reflecting a trial-and-error learning process across generations. Early humans developed a keen sense of materials, thermodynamics, and environmental interaction, embedding this knowledge into the very design of their homes. In conclusion, winter shelters were central to Ice Age survival, representing a synthesis of natural observation, practical engineering, and social cooperation. They provided warmth, safety, and stability, allowing humans to endure freezing temperatures, maintain health, and conserve energy. Shelters were not just functional. They were sites of learning, social bonding, and strategic planning. The ingenuity displayed in constructing these refuges underscores the adaptability, foresight, and intelligence of early humans. In the vast, frozen expanse of the Ice Age, a well-built shelter was more than protection. It was a lifeline, a center of human resilience, and a testament to the ability of our ancestors to endure, innovate, and thrive against overwhelming odds. In the relentless cold of the Ice Age, clothing was not merely a matter of comfort. It was a question of life or death. Early humans had to confront temperatures that could drop well below freezing, often for days or weeks at a time. Skin exposed to frostbite could be permanently damaged in minutes, and hypothermia could silently claim a body before the individual realized the danger. Clothing became an extension of the human body, a carefully constructed barrier against the unforgiving elements, and the development of effective garments was a critical evolutionary advantage. Animal hides were the primary material for winter clothing. Humans learned to treat, soften, and shape hides from mammoths, deer, reindeer, and other large mammals. Fur provided both insulation and wind resistance, while the underlayer of softer skins retained body heat. Early humans experimented with layering, recognizing that multiple layers trapped air, which acted as additional insulation. Outer layers protected against moisture, while inner layers kept the body warm. The combination of function and flexibility allowed humans to move freely while remaining protected, a delicate balance crucial for hunting, gathering, and long treks across frozen landscapes. Sewing and binding techniques were essential for creating effective garments. Early humans used sinew, plant fibers, or thin strips of hide to stitch pieces together, sometimes employing bone or wooden needles. The development of functional seams allowed garments to cover joints, extremities, and vulnerable areas that were most susceptible to frostbite. Gloves, leggings, and hoods may have been among the earliest specialized clothing items, designed to protect fingers, toes, ears, and the head. The evolution of these techniques reflect a combination of practical problem-solving, dexterity, and understanding of material properties, skills that were indispensable for winter survival. Footwear was particularly vital. Walking across snow, ice, and frozen terrain required protection from the cold, as well as support to prevent injury. Early humans likely crafted boots or moccasins from multiple layers of fur and hide, sometimes stuffed with grass or moss for additional insulation. These shoes were not merely protective. They enhanced mobility, allowing hunters to track animals over long distances without succumbing to frostbite or muscle fatigue. The ingenuity in designing footwear illustrates the broader human capacity to manipulate natural resources to meet specific environmental challenges. Clothing also had social and symbolic significance. Different patterns, decorations, or types of hides may have indicated group affiliation, status, or skill. Garments that were expertly sewn or crafted could reflect knowledge passed down through generations, serving as both functional items and cultural markers. Clothing thus bridged the gap between survival and identity, illustrating that early humans were not only pragmatic, but also capable of creativity and symbolic thought even under extreme environmental stress. Protecting the skin was as important as covering the body. Frostbite and cold-induced injuries could be fatal or permanently debilitating. Early humans learned to identify vulnerable areas and developed techniques to prevent heat loss. Wrapping extremities, layering clothing, and using body positioning to conserve heat were all strategies born out of careful observation and experience. Even small mistakes, such as exposing a hand for too long while handling tools, could have dire consequences. Clothing and protective practices became an integral part of survival knowledge, a combination of art, science, and instinct. Seasonal adjustments influenced clothing choices. During the coldest months, heavier, multi-layered garments were essential, while lighter materials sufficed during transitional periods. Humans adapted to local conditions, using available materials efficiently. In areas with deep snow and prolonged blizzards, fur-lined hoods and leggings were standard, whereas regions with shorter winters may have allowed for more minimalist attire. This flexibility highlights the adaptive intelligence of early humans, who could modify designs based on climate, activity level, and resource availability. Fire also played a role in clothing management. Heat from a fire could dry damp garments, prevent frost accumulation, and maintain comfort within shelters. Humans likely rotated clothing between wearing and drying cycles, especially during periods of hunting or long travel. This careful maintenance extended the life of garments and ensured consistent protection against cold, emphasizing that survival was as much about resource management as it was about immediate physical protection. Clothing, like other survival strategies, was intimately tied to social cooperation. Sharing hides, teaching sewing techniques, and assisting in dressing vulnerable members of the group reinforced social bonds. The success of the community depended on collective knowledge and mutual support. Individuals who could not properly protect themselves were at greater risk, and groups that failed to equip their members effectively risked losing not just one person, but the cohesion and survival capacity of the entire group. Clothing was thus both an individual necessity and a social responsibility. The process of acquiring and preparing clothing also influenced hunting and tool-making behaviors. Hunting large animals provided hides, bones, and sinew, which were all critical for garment production. Tools such as scrapers, knives, and needles were developed and refined specifically to facilitate clothing construction. In this way, clothing innovation drove technological advancement, and technology in turn enhanced survival. The interconnectedness of these strategies underscores the complexity of Ice Age human ingenuity, demonstrating that survival was a multi-layered challenge involving observation, skill, and cooperation. In essence, clothing and skin protection were not mere accessories. They were lifelines. They extended human capacity to endure extreme cold, enable mobility in dangerous terrain, and provided a foundation for social and technological development. The meticulous attention to material, construction, layering, and maintenance illustrates the intersection of intelligence, experience, and physical necessity. Early humans transformed natural resources into protective tools, turning the harshest months of the Ice Age into periods of calculated resilience rather than passive suffering. Ultimately, clothing represents a fundamental aspect of human adaptation. It allowed people to inhabit environments that would have otherwise been unlivable, provided a means of physical protection, and reinforced social cohesion through shared knowledge and collective effort. By understanding the sophistication of Ice Age clothing, we gain insight into the ingenuity, foresight, and creativity of early humans. Their survival depended not just on the body, but on the human ability to extend the body through innovation, foresight, and resourcefulness, transforming the extreme cold from an insurmountable threat into a challenge that could be strategically managed. Winter was the ultimate test of human ingenuity when it came to food. In the Ice Age, the cold months meant scarcity, unpredictability, and danger. Rivers froze, forests became hidden beneath thick layers of snow, and the animals that cavemen depended on for sustenance migrated to distant areas or hibernated. For early humans, the battle against hunger was relentless. Every decision, when to hunt, what to eat, how far to travel, carried life-or-death consequences. Winter hunting was not simply about survival. It was a high-stakes calculation, balancing energy expenditure with nutritional gain, risk with reward. Large herbivores, such as mammoths, reindeer, and bison, were primary sources of food during the cold months. These animals provided not only meat but also fat, sinew, hides, and bones, making them critical for multiple aspects of survival. However, hunting them was dangerous and required precise planning, cooperation, and specialized tools. Ice, deep snow, and bitter winds made tracking difficult, and predators, wolves, lions, and saber-toothed cats, competed for the same resources. Human groups had to be patient, observant, and strategic, often following herds for days or even weeks before an opportunity for a successful hunt presented itself. Tracking prey in snow and ice was a skill that demanded acute observation. Footprints in the snow told stories of movement, size, and even the physical condition of animals. Patterns of broken branches, disturbed snow, and droppings provided clues about feeding behavior and herd movement. Early humans developed a detailed understanding of animal behavior, learning to anticipate the migration of prey across frozen landscapes. Tracking was a mental exercise as much as a physical one, requiring memory, patience, and interpretation of subtle environmental signs. One wrong decision could mean wasted energy or, worse, a dangerous encounter with a predator. Hunting strategies were adapted to the winter environment. Ambushes and coordinated drives were common, where multiple hunters would work together to isolate a single animal or drive it toward a trap. Fire was sometimes used as a tool, creating barriers or controlling the direction of herd movement. Humans learned to exploit terrain, using cliffs, narrow passes, and snowdrifts to gain advantage. Even the time of day was important. The coldest hours limited activity, while slightly warmer periods offered opportunities to move quietly, track efficiently, and conserve energy. These methods illustrate how Ice Age humans combined observation, planning, and collaboration to meet the demands of winter survival. Small game and scavenging supplemented large hunts. Birds, hares, fish trapped in ice, and edible plants became critical when larger prey was unavailable. Humans developed traps, snares, and other techniques to secure these resources, turning even marginal opportunities into life-saving nutrition. Ice and snow presented both obstacles and tools. Frozen rivers could be used as pathways or fishing grounds, while snow-covered vegetation could conceal edible roots and tubers. Resourcefulness became as important as strength, and adaptability often determined which groups survived the harshest months. Preservation of food was equally critical. Winter could last for months, and the ability to store meat, fat, and other perishable resources was essential. Cavemen discovered methods such as drying meat over fire, smoking it, and storing it in cold, sheltered locations where it would remain edible. These practices required foresight, planning, and meticulous execution. Without effective preservation, a successful hunt could provide only temporary relief, leaving humans vulnerable when storms or migrations made hunting impossible. Preservation strategies were an early form of resource management, demonstrating the sophistication of Ice Age survival techniques. Energy efficiency dictated hunting practices. The expenditure of calories in pursuit of prey had to be carefully calculated. Hunting large animals in deep snow required significant physical effort, so humans often planned hunts around locations that minimized unnecessary exertion. Collaboration allowed for energy conservation. Groups divided roles, with some individuals tracking, others ambushing, and others protecting from predators. This division of labor maximized the chances of success, while reducing individual fatigue. The interplay of physical endurance, environmental knowledge, and teamwork was central to winter hunting success. Predators shaped human hunting behavior as much as prey. Wolves, lions, and other carnivores not only competed for food, but also posed direct threats to humans during hunts. Awareness of predator behavior influenced hunting times, group size, and tactics. Humans learned to anticipate attacks, position themselves strategically, and use weapons effectively. In some cases, fire or noise could be used to deter predators, while in others, stealth and observation were more effective. Survival required a constant negotiation between hunting for sustenance and avoiding becoming prey. Winter survival strategies were also reflected in social organization. Hunting large game demanded collaboration, coordination, and communication. Successful hunts strengthened social bonds, created hierarchies based on skill and experience, and reinforced communal trust. Food sharing was essential, not only as a means of sustaining weaker or more vulnerable members, but also as a way to ensure group cohesion. The distribution of resources, particularly during lean winter months, shaped both survival and social dynamics, illustrating that hunting was as much a cultural activity as it was a physical one. Psychological resilience played a significant role in food acquisition. Scarcity, cold, and repeated hunting failures could lead to despair or poor decision-making. Groups that maintained morale, encouraged persistence, and shared knowledge were more likely to succeed. Storytelling, rituals, and collective problem-solving around food sources may have helped maintain focus and reduce stress during extended periods of scarcity. In this way, mental endurance was as crucial as physical ability, highlighting the complexity of human adaptation to extreme winter conditions. Fire, again, played a dual role. It provided warmth during long hunting expeditions and allowed for the cooking and preservation of food. Additionally, the light and smoke of fire could be used to drive animals into traps or distract predators. The careful integration of fire into hunting and food processing strategies reflects a deep understanding of its utility beyond immediate survival. Early humans did not simply react to their environment. They manipulated it, leveraging knowledge, tools, and fire to increase efficiency and security. In conclusion, winter hunting and food management were central pillars of Ice Age survival. Early humans combined observation, physical skill, strategic planning, and social cooperation to meet the challenges of scarcity. Their methods were sophisticated, reflecting an understanding of animal behavior, environmental patterns, energy conservation, and resource preservation. Every hunt, every trap, every preserved cache was a calculated effort to endure the harshest months of the year. The ability to secure food in winter was not just a matter of survival. It was a testament to human intelligence, cooperation, and resilience, qualities that allowed the species to thrive even under the most extreme conditions. Water, often taken for granted in modern life, was a vital and sometimes scarce resource for cavemen during the frozen winters of the Ice Age. Rivers and streams frequently froze, lakes became ice sheets, and snow-covered terrain limited access to liquid water. Dehydration was a serious threat, weakening the body, reducing the ability to generate heat, and impairing mental function. Early humans had to develop techniques to secure water, understanding that even a reliable fire or plentiful food could not compensate for a lack of hydration. Water was as essential to survival as warmth, nutrition, or shelter. Cavemen turned to snow and ice as primary water sources, but these required preparation. Eating snow directly could lower body temperature, potentially leading to hypothermia, and ice had to be melted before consumption. Fire was again indispensable, providing the heat necessary to transform frozen water into drinkable liquid. Humans learned to store and melt snow in containers made from bark, hollowed logs, or animal hides, sometimes using rocks heated in fire to accelerate the process. This careful preparation reflects an understanding of thermodynamics and the necessity of minimizing energy loss while extracting life-sustaining water. Natural springs and unfrozen streams, when available, were precious. Locating these water sources required detailed knowledge of the landscape, including elevation, soil type, and seasonal shifts. Early humans had to track areas where currents prevented ice formation or where geothermal activity maintained liquid water. Even these sources were not entirely safe. Falling into partially frozen rivers, encountering predators, or facing sudden weather changes could turn a routine water-gathering mission into a life-threatening event. Knowledge, observation, and timing were essential for ensuring a consistent water supply. Storage techniques further enhanced winter hydration strategies. Humans developed insulated caches, often buried under snow or hidden in sheltered locations, to prevent melting or contamination. Containers made from wood, bark, or animal hides protected water from freezing and allowed for transportation during hunting or migration. This ability to store water reflected foresight and planning, ensuring that groups remained hydrated even when immediate sources were inaccessible. Access to stored water could mean the difference between life and death during prolonged storms or extended treks across frozen terrain. The interplay between water, fire, and shelter was critical. Water melting for consumption had to be balanced with conserving heat and maintaining shelter warmth. Boiling water not only made it safer to drink by killing pathogens, but also provided warmth and moisture to the immediate environment, slightly mitigating the cold. Humans had to carefully coordinate their resources. Firewood, water, and shelter placement were all interconnected in strategies for winter survival. This complex relationship underscores a multifaceted approach early humans took to basic necessities. Hygiene, often overlooked in discussions of survival, was another factor linked to water. Even limited access to clean water helped reduce the risk of illness, particularly when consuming preserved or cooked foods. Cavemen likely used small amounts of water for cleaning utensils, wounds, and sometimes their own bodies, balancing hygiene needs with the scarcity of the resource. The careful allocation of water for multiple purposes demonstrates practical decision-making and an early understanding of its broader role in health and longevity. Group dynamics influence water management. Larger groups required greater water resources, necessitating careful planning and coordination. Some individuals may have specialized in water collection and storage, while others focused on hunting, fire maintenance, or shelter construction. Cooperation ensured that resources were distributed efficiently and that no one person's needs compromised the survival of the group. Social organization was therefore intertwined with water management, illustrating how survival strategies were both individual and collective. Environmental awareness was crucial in maintaining water supplies. Early humans observed seasonal changes, snow accumulation, and ice thickness to determine the safest and most reliable methods for obtaining water. They learned to identify contaminated or stagnant sources, avoiding water that could cause illness. They also recognized natural indicators of fresh water, such as animal tracks leading to unfrozen streams or the presence of certain vegetation. These observations were a form of early ecological intelligence, showing how closely humans were attuned to their surroundings. Water scarcity also influenced hunting, migration, and daily routines. Groups often planned activities around proximity to reliable water sources, adjusting travel routes, hunting locations, and shelter placement accordingly. Dry areas or regions with unreliable water could not sustain large groups, forcing humans to either adapt or relocate. Water availability, therefore, was a key driver of settlement patterns, mobility strategies, and resource allocation, highlighting its centrality to survival in winter environments. In conclusion, water was an indispensable component of Ice Age survival, shaping behavior, social organization, and technological innovation. Humans had to locate, extract, melt, and store water efficiently, balancing these tasks against the demands of food acquisition, shelter maintenance, and protection from predators. Their strategies demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of the physical properties of water, environmental patterns, and the interplay between basic survival needs. In the frozen expanse of winter landscapes, water was as precious as warmth, food, and fire, a resource that required knowledge, skill, and cooperation to secure. The ability to manage this simple yet essential element highlights the ingenuity, foresight, and adaptability of early humans, revealing a critical layer of Ice Age survival that underpinned every other aspect of their daily lives. Fire and tools were the twin pillars of Ice Age survival, especially during the unforgiving winters. Individually, each provided a critical advantage. Fire for warmth, cooking, and psychological security, tools for hunting, crafting, and protection. But together, they formed a synergistic system that amplified human capability, turning vulnerability into resilience. Early humans understood that neither fire nor tools alone could guarantee survival. Only their integration into a coordinated strategy allowed them to navigate frozen landscapes, secure food, and defend against predators. The crafting of tools was an intricate process, reflecting deep observation and manual skill. Stones were chipped into sharp edges for cutting, scraping, and piercing. Bones and antlers were shaped into points, needles, and awls for sewing hides, making clothing or crafting shelters. Tools were extensions of the body, designed to compensate for physical limitations and leverage human ingenuity. They allowed early humans to access resources that would otherwise be unattainable, from piercing thick hides to cutting through frozen meat or shaping firewood into usable forms. Each tool was a product of trial, error, and accumulated knowledge, passed down through generations. Fire augmented the effectiveness of these tools in multiple ways. Heated stones could harden wooden spears, making them stronger for hunting large prey. Hot embers could soften hides for clothing and shelter construction, making materials more pliable and easier to work with. Cooking with fire transformed tough, fibrous meat into digestible calories, which in turn fueled the physical exertion needed to craft and use tools effectively. The interplay between fire and tools created a feedback loop. Tools facilitated fire management and resource extraction, while fire enhanced the utility of tools, increasing survival efficiency across the group. Hunting, perhaps the most critical application of this synergy, demanded coordination between fire, tools, and human skill. Large animals like mammoths or bison were not only difficult to kill, but also dangerous to approach. Humans used stone-tipped spears, bone knives, and carefully designed traps to increase hunting success while minimizing risk. Fire could be used strategically to herd prey, illuminate hunting areas during twilight, or drive predators away from kills. The combination of observation, crafted tools, and controlled fire demonstrated a level of strategic planning rarely attributed to early humans, revealing a sophisticated understanding of both prey behavior and environmental manipulation. Tool making was itself a survival strategy during winter. Ice, snow, and frozen ground made mobility difficult and increased the risk of injury. Well-crafted tools reduced effort, improved safety, and enhanced productivity. Knives could be used to cut firewood efficiently, axes to chop frozen branches, and scrapers to prepare hides for clothing or insulation. These tools were not disposable. They were maintained, repaired, and sharpened, reflecting both resource conservation and the value of accumulated knowledge. Every tool carried the imprint of human foresight, an understanding that survival depended on preparation as much as immediate action. Cooking with fire transformed more than just food. It also influenced social dynamics and skill transfer. Around the hearth, younger members learned tool-making techniques, hide preparation, and hunting strategies from elders. Fire became a classroom, a workshop, and a gathering point. Tools could be demonstrated, tested, and improved in proximity to warmth and light, creating an environment where knowledge could be shared efficiently even in the harshest conditions. This combination of fire and tool use reinforced both survival skills and social cohesion, strengthening group resilience in ways that isolated individuals could not achieve. The psychological impact of fire-tool synergy was profound. The presence of controlled fire, combined with the ability to craft and wield effective tools, instilled confidence in the face of environmental threats. Fear of predators, blizzards, or isolation could be mitigated through strategic action. Tools offered tangible solutions, while fire provided the comfort and warmth that allowed cognitive focus. This dual assurance, physical and psychological, was critical in sustaining energy, motivation, and morale during extended periods of hardship. Survival depended not only on physical capability, but on maintaining mental acuity and resilience. Specialized tools emerged in response to seasonal challenges. Winter conditions demanded implements that could operate in freezing temperatures, penetrate frozen ground, or extract food from ice and snow. Chisels, scrapers, and awls were adapted to specific materials and tasks, demonstrating early humans' ability to innovate in response to environmental constraints. Fire facilitated these innovations by softening materials, testing durability, and providing a controlled setting for experimentation. This iterative process of invention highlights the intelligence and adaptability required for long-term survival in winter landscapes. The integration of fire and tools also influenced mobility and settlement patterns. Temporary shelters and semi-permanent camps were constructed using tools to manipulate wood, stone, and hides, while fire allowed safe habitation in cold environments. Groups could remain in one location longer, improving hunting strategies, food preservation, and social cohesion. Conversely, when relocation was necessary, tools and fire allowed for the rapid construction of temporary shelters, efficient hunting, and safe water preparation. This flexibility demonstrates that survival was not static. It was a dynamic process of planning, adaptation, and strategic resource management. Predator encounters further emphasize the necessity of fire and tools. Humans were both hunters and potential prey, requiring weapons for protection and fire for deterrence. Spears, knives, and clubs were deployed defensively, while fire created a protective perimeter around campsites. The dual approach, using physical tools for immediate defense and fire for both deterrence and psychological reassurance, maximized safety. Early humans understood that vulnerability could be mitigated through proactive measures, and the combined use of fire and tools was a sophisticated expression of this understanding. Finally, the legacy of fire and tool synergy extended beyond survival. These innovations laid the foundation for future technological developments, shaping the trajectory of human evolution. Knowledge of materials, energy management, and environmental manipulation accumulated over generations, forming a cultural repository that would influence social structures, hunting techniques, and eventually, the development of agriculture and permanent settlements. The Ice Age was not only a period of survival, but a crucible in which human ingenuity was tested and honed, producing tools and skills that define our species. In conclusion, the combination of fire and tools was a cornerstone of winter survival for early humans. Fire provided warmth, nourishment, and psychological security, while tools amplified human capability in hunting, crafting, and defense. Together, they created a system of interdependent strategies that transformed vulnerability into resilience. Mastery of these elements required observation, experimentation, skill, and social cooperation. The synergy of fire and tools illustrates the ingenuity, adaptability, and foresight of Ice Age humans, highlighting a critical layer of survival intelligence that allowed them not only to endure, but to thrive amidst the harshest conditions imaginable. Winter survival was not only a battle against the elements, it was also a test of social cohesion, cooperation, and the strength of familial and communal bonds. Early humans relied on one another for warmth, food, protection, and knowledge. In freezing landscapes, no individual could endure alone for long. The harsh conditions of the Ice Age fostered interdependence, creating social structures that were critical for survival. Families, clans, and larger groups became living networks of shared responsibility, each member contributing to the collective ability to endure the winter months. The family unit was central to daily life. Adults hunted, crafted tools, and maintained fires, while children and the elderly contributed by gathering small game, collecting firewood, preparing hides, or caring for younger siblings. Each role was vital, and the survival of the group depended on the effective performance of these tasks. Tasks were often divided according to skill, strength, and experience, with older members teaching younger ones essential knowledge such as tracking, shelter construction, and fire management. This intergenerational transfer of expertise ensured that survival strategies were preserved, refined, and passed down. Communication was key to coordinating survival strategies. Early humans used vocalizations, gestures, and possibly early symbolic signs to share critical information, signals for danger, directions of water or food sources, and the status of ongoing hunts allowed groups to operate with remarkable coordination despite extreme weather conditions. Effective communication enabled the execution of complex strategies, such as driving prey into traps or defending the group from predators. Without coordination, efforts could be wasted and the risk of exposure or injury increased dramatically. Social cohesion was therefore both a practical and life-preserving necessity. Winter required more deliberate cooperation than other seasons. Tasks that could be done individually in milder weather, like hunting, gathering, or constructing temporary shelters, became far more challenging in snow, ice, and extreme cold. Group cooperation minimized energy expenditure, reduced risk, and increased efficiency. For example, building a snow-insulated hut, chopping and transporting firewood, or preserving food caches often required multiple people working together. Success depended on trust, communication, and the ability to anticipate one another's actions. The ability to function as a cohesive unit often determined which group survived the coldest months. Sharing resources was a central element of winter survival. Food, clothing, and fire were distributed according to need, with communal responsibility overriding individual possession. This practice ensured that the weakest members, the very young, elderly, or injured, could survive alongside stronger hunters. By prioritizing group survival over individual gain, early humans created a social system that reinforced mutual dependence. Such cooperation strengthened bonds, reduced conflict, and enhanced the overall resilience of the community. In the unforgiving environment of winter, the well-being of one member was inseparable from the well-being of all. Rituals and daily routines reinforce social bonds and maintain morale during harsh winter conditions. Even simple acts, such as communal meals around the fire or collective storytelling, provided psychological relief and strengthened connections. Storytelling allowed for the transfer of knowledge, encoded lessons about hunting, weather patterns, or predator behavior into memorable narratives. Ritualized practices may also have had practical survival functions, reinforcing schedules for fire maintenance, hunting preparation, or water collection. In this way, social structures and cultural practices were intertwined with survival strategies, demonstrating that the human response to winter was as much social and cognitive as it was physical. Conflict management was another critical aspect of social organization. Winter scarcity could increase tension over resources, territory, or hunting rights. Groups developed implicit rules and hierarchies to mitigate disputes, with experienced leaders or skilled hunters often guiding decisions. Respect for knowledge and authority ensured that collective efforts were not undermined by selfish behavior. The ability to maintain social harmony under stress was as important as any tool or fire, because disunity could lead to exposure, starvation, or vulnerability to predators. Social intelligence was a key survival trait in addition to physical prowess. Cooperation extended beyond immediate family units. Larger clans or interconnected groups sometimes shared knowledge of seasonal migration routes, water sources, and hunting grounds. These networks allowed for broader resource management and mutual support during particularly harsh winters. Temporary alliances could enhance survival, allowing groups to pool resources, exchange tools, or jointly defend against threats. Such cooperative behavior reflects early forms of social complexity, illustrating that winter survival fostered not only practical ingenuity, but also the roots of cultural and societal development. Children were integral to winter survival as well. Beyond their eventual roles as future hunters and toolmakers, they participated in gathering small resources, maintaining firewood, and learning observational skills from adults. Their presence ensured that knowledge was continuously transmitted and that the next generation would inherit the collective wisdom of the group. Education during the winter months, often informal and hands-on, reinforced both survival skills and social norms, integrating the young into the community's cooperative framework. Early humans understood that survival was a multi-generational endeavor, relying on the preservation and transfer of knowledge. Psychological resilience was maintained through these social structures. Cold, hunger, and long nights could sap morale, leading to despair or poor decision-making. Shared responsibilities, communal warmth, and regular interaction mitigated isolation and anxiety. Humans found emotional comfort in social bonds, creating a sense of safety even in the harshest environments. This psychological support was as vital as fire or food, helping individuals maintain the focus, energy, and determination necessary for enduring extended periods of extreme cold. In conclusion, family and social structure were at the heart of winter survival. Cooperation, resource sharing, communication, and intergenerational knowledge transfer allowed early humans to endure conditions that would have been impossible alone. Winter reinforced the importance of collective action, shaping social norms, hierarchies, and networks that were critical for both immediate survival and long-term continuity. Survival was not just a physical challenge. It was a deeply social enterprise. By understanding how early humans structured their communities during the Ice Age, we gain insight into the intricate interplay between environment, culture, and human resilience. The bonds formed and strategies developed around winter survival illustrate the profound interdependence that defines our species, an interdependence that allowed humanity to thrive in one of the harshest climates on Earth. Winter was not only a battle against cold, hunger, and isolation, it was also a constant confrontation with predators. Ice Age humans shared their environment with formidable carnivores, including wolves, saber-toothed cats, cave lions, and even mammoth-hunting hyenas. These predators were adapted to the same harsh climates, perfectly equipped to survive in snow and ice. For early humans, every step outside a shelter carried risk. Survival required a careful combination of vigilance, strategy, and innovation, as well as the ability to anticipate the behavior of predators that were both competitors and threats. Understanding predator behavior was crucial. Humans learned that wolves hunted in packs, relying on cooperation and endurance, while large cats, such as saber-toothed lions, relied on stealth and sudden attacks. Predators followed the same herds that humans pursued, creating complex competition for resources. Tracking predators, observing their patterns, and learning the preferred hunting times allowed early humans to minimize danger. Groups may have identified safe corridors, avoided areas with fresh tracks, or adjusted hunting schedules based on predator activity. Knowledge of predators was as essential as knowledge of prey, for one miscalculation could be fatal. Fire played a vital defensive role. Beyond providing warmth, fire served as a deterrent to predators, illuminating campsites and creating a psychological barrier. The flickering flames and smoke could keep wolves and other predators at a distance, while human presence reinforced the perimeter. Campfires were carefully maintained, with enough embers to signal activity and discourage nocturnal attacks. Strategically placed fires also allowed humans to monitor movement in the surrounding area, giving early warning of approaching threats. Fire was a critical component of risk management, extending both safety and psychological reassurance. Tools and weapons enhanced defensive strategies. Spears, clubs, and stone knives allowed humans to engage predators at a distance, defend vulnerable members, and assert dominance over contested spaces. Weapons were often multifunctional. The same spear used for hunting could be wielded in defense, while fire-hardened sticks could deter or wound smaller predators. Effective use of tools required skill, coordination, and planning. Groups that could deploy defensive tools efficiently were better able to survive extended winter periods, when predators were often hungrier and more aggressive due to scarcity of prey. Shelter design reflected awareness of predator threats. Caves, huts, and snow-insulated structures were not only intended to conserve warmth, but also provide protection against attacks. Entrances were often narrow and strategically positioned, creating choke points that limited predator access. Temporary barriers, such as stacked stones, thorn branches, or snow walls, enhanced security. Even the placement of sleeping areas within a shelter took predator behavior into account, with communal huddling providing both warmth and protection for the most vulnerable members of the group. The integration of predator defense into daily living demonstrates the complexity of Ice Age survival strategies. Group vigilance was critical during the long nights of winter. Humans likely established rotations of watchfulness, with certain members monitoring the perimeter while others slept or rested. Sound, movement, and even scent could signal danger, and experienced members interpreted these cues to alert the group. This system required trust, coordination, and knowledge, ensuring that the community remained alert without exhausting all members. Collective vigilance, combined with fire and tools, allowed humans to mitigate the risks posed by predators and maintain a degree of safety in an otherwise hostile environment. Winter hunting itself increased the risk of predator encounters. As humans tracked prey across frozen landscapes, they often entered territories where predators were actively hunting the same animals. Stealth and camouflage became essential, as did coordinated movement and timing. Humans learned to anticipate predator behavior while focusing on their own objectives, balancing aggression with caution. Even after successful hunts, carcasses attracted carnivores, requiring careful defense and sometimes relocation of food caches to avoid loss or injury. This delicate negotiation between hunting for sustenance and avoiding predation highlights the constant strategic thinking required for winter survival. Predators also influence social organization and hierarchy. Experienced hunters often assumed leadership roles in defense planning, guiding the group in positioning, response strategies, and resource protection. Knowledge of predator behavior was a form of social capital, conferring status and influence. Individuals who could teach, lead, and coordinate effective defensive measures were valued not only for skill, but for survival advantage they provided the group. Winter conditions amplified the importance of these roles, as any lapse in vigilance could have catastrophic consequences. Psychological adaptation was equally important. Constant exposure to predator threats could induce fear, stress, and hypervigilance, all of which could be physically and mentally draining. Fire, communal living, and structured routines help mitigate anxiety, creating a sense of security and predictability in an unpredictable world. Humans develop mental strategies to remain calm, focused, and alert, understanding that panic could undermine even the best prepared defensive measures. In this sense, survival was as much about mental resilience as it was about physical tools, social cooperation, or environmental knowledge. Seasonal shifts affected predator strategies as well. In deep winter, prey scarcity increased predator activity near human camps and hunting grounds. Wolves and large cats often pushed closer to human territories, seeking the same herds or scavenging remains of human kills. Early humans had to anticipate these shifts, adjusting hunting schedules, reinforcing shelters, and increasing vigilance. Awareness of seasonal predator patterns allowed groups to survive extreme winters with fewer conflicts and higher rates of food security. Knowledge of predator ecology was therefore a cornerstone of winter survival strategy. In conclusion, predators were omnipresent threats during Ice Age winters, shaping every aspect of human behavior, strategy, and social organization. Humans responded with a combination of observation, fire management, tool use, shelter optimization, and coordinated group vigilance. Survival required understanding predator behavior, anticipating their movements, and implementing measures to reduce risk while still acquiring necessary resources. Predator defense was not reactive. It was a calculated, strategic component of daily life. The ability to coexist with, and at times outmaneuver, these dangerous animals underscores the intelligence, adaptability, and resilience of early humans, illustrating that survival in the Ice Age was a delicate balance between hunting, protection, and social cooperation. Winter often forced early humans to move, either to follow migrating herds, locate reliable water, or seek more hospitable environments. Migration during the Ice Age was not casual wandering. It was a carefully planned journey, dictated by environmental pressures and survival needs. Snow-covered landscapes, frozen rivers, and bitter winds made every step physically taxing, while limited food and the constant threat predators created high-stakes conditions. Winter journeys tested endurance, coordination, and decision-making, requiring groups to balance the need for movement with the risk of exhaustion or exposure. Tracking animal herds was a primary motivator for migration. Large herbivores such as reindeer, mammoths, and bison follow predictable seasonal routes, and humans who fail to anticipate these movements risk starvation. Observation of past patterns, snow tracks, vegetation changes, and predator behavior informed decisions about when and where to travel. Moving with the herds allowed humans to maintain access to food, hides, and other critical resources. However, these migrations demanded precise timing and coordination, as arriving too early or too late could result in unsuccessful hunts or depleted resources. Planning was essential for survival during winter treks. Humans needed to consider terrain, weather patterns, and energy expenditure. Deep snow and frozen ground slowed progress, requiring careful selection of routes that minimize risk and maximize efficiency. Shelter opportunities, such as caves or dense forested areas, were mapped and incorporated into migration plans, providing refuge during storms or extreme cold. Firewood and other resources were also factored in, as the ability to maintain warmth along the journey could mean the difference between survival and death. Migration was, in essence, a logistical operation executed under extreme conditions. Groups likely traveled in coordinated formations. Experienced hunters, familiar with the landscape, guided the way, while others carried food, fire-starting materials, and tools. Children, elders, and the less physically capable moved in protected positions, often in the center of the group, shielded from wind, snow, and predators. Communication was vital, ensuring that no one was left behind, that threats could be detected early, and that tasks were divided efficiently. These journeys reinforced social cohesion, highlighting the interdependence that was crucial for surviving winter conditions. Tools and fire again played pivotal roles during migration. Fire was used to create temporary camps, melt snow for water, and cook meals along the route. Tools allowed humans to cut through ice, repair clothing, and construct makeshift shelters. Spears, knives, and clubs provided protection from predators encountered en route. These resources extended the group's mobility, allowing them to traverse long distances, while maintaining a reasonable level of safety and sustenance. Mobility itself became a survival strategy, and tools and fire were indispensable facilitators. Food management was a constant concern during winter migrations. Limited supplies required rationing, while hunting opportunities had to be carefully timed to conserve energy. Groups likely supplemented large game with small animals, scavenging, and preserved food caches from previous locations. Planning meals to maximize caloric intake, maintain warmth, and sustain physical performance was critical. Failure to coordinate hunting, rationing, and energy expenditure could lead to exhaustion or exposure, emphasizing the delicate balance between movement and survival in harsh winter environments. Water access also shaped migration routes. Frozen rivers, snow, and limited unfrozen springs dictated the choice of pathways. Early humans needed to carry containers or establish temporary sources for melting ice along the journey. Water scarcity not only affected physical endurance, but also influenced decisions about camp locations and travel timing. Successful migration depended on the ability to anticipate and secure hydration points, integrating them into broader survival strategies that included food, warmth, and predator avoidance. Predator encounters were amplified during migration. Moving groups were more vulnerable than stationary ones, as mobility reduced the effectiveness of defensive formations and fire perimeters. Wolves, large cats, and scavenging predators often followed human parties, attracted by the scent of food or the movement of animals in the same region. Vigilance, group coordination, and strategic use of fire and weapons were essential to reduce risk. Migration required a delicate balance between speed, resource conservation, and predator management, all executed under extreme winter conditions. Psychological resilience was tested during extended winter journeys. Harsh weather, fatigue, hunger, and constant vigilance could erode morale. Social structures, routines, and shared responsibilities helped maintain focus and cohesion. Storytelling, communal decision-making, and support for weaker members fostered mental endurance, ensuring that the group could continue moving despite the hardships. The mental strategies employed were as critical as physical tools, illustrating that survival during migration was both a cognitive and practical endeavor. Seasonal strategy influenced the timing and direction of winter migrations. Early humans understood patterns of precipitation, snow accumulation, and herd behavior, allowing them to optimize travel for energy efficiency and resource access. Sometimes migration was unavoidable. In other cases, it was a calculated choice to avoid resource depletion or extreme conditions. These decisions reflected not just instinct but sophisticated environmental intelligence, combining observation, memory, and forecasting to navigate complex, frozen landscapes. Cultural knowledge was embedded in these migrations. Routes, resource locations, and survival strategies were passed down through generations, creating a living map of the environment. Groups that successfully transmitted this knowledge could endure harsher winters and recover more quickly from failed hunts or unexpected storms. Migration became both a survival strategy and a vehicle for cultural continuity, shaping the collective intelligence and resilience of human populations. In conclusion, winter migrations were a critical aspect of Ice Age survival, integrating environmental knowledge, social cohesion, tool use, and fire management into coordinated journeys across frozen landscapes. Humans navigated snow-covered plains, ice-bound rivers, and predator-filled forests with careful planning, observation, and cooperation. Mobility itself was a tool for survival, allowing groups to track prey, access water, and avoid hazards. The intelligence, foresight, and adaptability required for these journeys highlight the complex interplay of physical skill, social strategy, and environmental awareness that defined human resilience during the harshest winters. Winter migration was not merely a response to scarcity. It was a calculated, strategic, and communal endeavor that ensured both survival and the continuity of knowledge across generations. Winter was not merely a physical challenge for Ice Age humans. It was also a period rich in cultural significance, ritual, and belief. The harsh and unpredictable environment prompted early humans to develop practices that went beyond survival, creating a sense of order, community, and psychological security. Rituals, ceremonies, and symbolic behaviors served multiple purposes. They reinforced social bonds, communicated knowledge about resources and dangers, and offered a way to make sense of a world dominated by snow, ice, and predators. Even in the bleakest months, culture and belief became essential tools for navigating both the environment and human society. Fire was central to many winter rituals. Beyond its practical uses for warmth, cooking, and protection, fire provided a focal point for communal gatherings. Flames illuminated the darkness, creating spaces for storytelling, teaching, and symbolic expression. Around the hearth, early humans could recount hunting successes, narrate seasonal cycles, or share myths about predators, weather, and migration. These stories were more than entertainment. They encoded practical survival knowledge, reinforcing lessons about tracking animals, reading environmental signs, and cooperative behavior. Fire thus became a bridge between practicality and culture, offering both physical and intellectual nourishment. Winter solstice and the changing seasons may have held special significance. Observing patterns of daylight, snow accumulation, and animal migration allowed early humans to anticipate environmental shifts and plan accordingly. Rituals linked to these observations likely helped structure communal activities, such as hunting, migration, and food preservation. Ceremonies may have marked the passage of time, ensuring that collective memory of seasonal hazards and opportunities was maintained. By embedding environmental knowledge into ritual, early humans transformed observation into shared cultural wisdom, strengthening group cohesion and preparedness. Rituals often reinforce social hierarchies and roles. Skilled hunters, firekeepers, and experienced elders likely played prominent roles in ceremonies, guiding the group in both practical and symbolic matters. These roles were not purely decorative. They communicated authority, expertise, and trustworthiness. Recognizing and respecting such hierarchies allowed groups to function efficiently under extreme winter stress. Rituals served to formalize social bonds, highlight leadership, and ensure that knowledge was disseminated in ways that reinforced both survival and cultural continuity. Symbolic artifacts, such as carved bones, painted stones, or decorated tools, may have been integral to winter rituals. These objects could serve as reminders of successful hunts, markers of territory, or representations of spiritual beliefs. They created a tangible connection between humans and their environment, embedding survival knowledge into physical forms that could be observed, shared, and transmitted. Such artifacts illustrate that even in extreme cold, humans sought meaning and order, turning daily challenges into opportunities for expression and cultural identity. Group cohesion was reinforced through shared rituals during the long winter nights. Communal meals, fire maintenance, and storytelling provided not only sustenance and warmth, but also a sense of belonging and emotional stability. These practices reduce anxiety, build trust, and encourage cooperation, essential factors when facing scarce resources, predators, and harsh weather. The psychological benefits of ritual were inseparable from their practical effects. They helped maintain morale, focus, and resilience, ensuring that groups could endure extended periods of adversity. Rituals may also have been linked to hunting and food acquisition. Ceremonies performed before or after hunts could honor the spirits of animals, reinforce ethical hunting practices, or celebrate communal success. These acts likely strengthened the moral and social framework surrounding resource use, ensuring that hunting was coordinated, respectful, and sustainable. By intertwining spiritual belief with practical activity, early humans created a holistic system that combined survival, culture, and ethical understanding. Winter isolation amplified the importance of cultural expression. With limited mobility due to snow, storms, and frozen terrain, much of daily life was centered within shelters or communal spaces. Rituals provided structure to otherwise monotonous or stressful routines, transforming extended periods of confinement into opportunities for teaching, storytelling, and skill transmission. Children learn survival techniques through observation and participation, while adults reinforce social norms, prepare tools, and maintain collective memory. Cultural adaptation became a survival strategy in itself, ensuring that knowledge and cohesion endured through long, harsh months. Beliefs may have also influenced decisions about fire, tools, and movement. Certain areas could have been considered sacred or safer due to ancestral knowledge, guiding settlement and migration choices. Fire maintenance rituals ensured that warmth, light, and protection were continuously available, blending practicality with spiritual oversight. These practices show that cognition, culture, and survival were intertwined, and that Ice Age humans were not only pragmatic, but also deeply reflective about their place in the world. Art and symbolism served as an emotional outlet during winter hardships. Engraving, painting, or carving could provide a sense of accomplishment, creativity, an expression amid scarcity and danger. Artistic activity may have strengthened social identity, conveyed knowledge, or acted as a teaching tool. In this way, culture and survival were inseparable. Rituals, symbolic objects, and art reinforced cooperation, transmitted experience, and offered psychological resilience in the darkest, coldest months. In conclusion, winter rituals, beliefs, and cultural adaptations were essential aspects of Ice Age survival. They reinforced social cohesion, transmitted practical knowledge, enhanced psychological resilience, and imbued human activity with meaning beyond immediate survival. Fire, storytelling, ceremonial practice, and symbolic artifacts created a framework that allowed early humans to navigate the challenges of the coldest months with intelligence, cooperation, and creativity. These cultural practices illustrate that survival was not only a matter of physical endurance, but also of social and cognitive adaptation. Winter, with all its perils, became a crucible for the development of human culture, forging not just survivors, but communities rich in knowledge, creativity, and shared purpose. Winter demanded more than food, water, or fire. It required mastery of clothing and shelter. Ice Age humans could not survive the bitter cold of frozen landscapes without carefully crafted protection from the elements. Clothing and shelter were not mere conveniences. They were lifelines, engineered through observation, experimentation, and ingenuity. Every layer of fur, every insulated hut, every arrangement of hides and branches reflected human adaptation to extreme environments. Survival in winter depended on understanding thermodynamics, material properties, and the strategic use of natural resources. Clothing was the first line of defense against hypothermia and frostbite. Early humans developed garments from animal hides, furs, and sinews, tailoring them to body shape and movement. Layering was critical. Multiple furs trapped air for insulation, while tight bindings at the wrists, ankles, and neck prevented heat loss. Footwear, often made from soft hides and reinforced with plant fibers or additional furs, protected feet from ice and snow, allowing mobility in conditions that would otherwise be paralyzing. Clothing reflected not only survival instinct, but sophisticated problem-solving, balancing protection with flexibility and durability. The process of creating clothing involved multiple skills. Hides had to be cleaned, stretched, and softened, often using heated stone, smoke, or repetitive kneading. Sinews and plant fibers were twisted into cords and threads, enabling sewing and lacing techniques that improved fit and effectiveness. Needles crafted from bone or antler allowed precise assembly, demonstrating early humans' dexterity and patience. Each garment was a product of observation, skill, and accumulated knowledge, essential technology in a frozen world where even minor errors could have fatal consequences. Shelters provided the second, equally critical layer of protection. Caves were ideal when available, offering natural insulation, protection from wind, and predator defense. When caves were scarce, humans constructed temporary or semi-permanent huts using wood, stone, and hides. Snow and ice were sometimes incorporated into walls or roofs, creating insulated structures that retained heat while protecting inhabitants from the wind and precipitation. Shelter design required careful planning. Entrances were positioned to minimize heat loss and block predators, while interior arrangements maximized warmth, communal interaction, and efficient use of space. Fire integrated seamlessly with clothing and shelter. The hearth provided localized heat, enhancing the insulation offered by garments and snow walls. Clothing and shelter were designed to work with fire. Smoke ventilation, bedding placement, and communal huddling patterns all reflected strategic thinking. Humans optimized these factors to reduce energy expenditure, ensuring that warmth was conserved during the long, dark nights. The combination of insulated clothing, structured shelters, and controlled fire created microenvironments capable of sustaining life in temperatures that would otherwise be lethal. Mobility was a central consideration. Winter clothing and shelter had to balance protection with practicality. Garments had to allow for walking, hunting, and gathering, while shelters needed to be erected, maintained, and sometimes relocated. Portability was essential during migration or when pursuing herds. Early humans developed folding, flexible, and adaptable solutions. Garments could be adjusted, layered, or repaired, and temporary shelters could be dismantled and moved. This flexibility demonstrates the dynamic relationship between survival needs and technological innovation. Material selection was based on function, availability, and local knowledge. Furs from mammoths, reindeer, or foxes provided superior insulation, while softer hides from smaller animals were ideal for inner layers or delicate clothing. Shelter construction relied on local wood, stone, and snow, with insulation enhanced by moss, leaves, and additional hides. Humans understood the thermal properties of different materials, creating structures and clothing that maximized warmth while conserving energy. This knowledge was accumulated over generations, forming a practical science of cold weather survival long before formal experimentation. Group cooperation enhanced clothing and shelter effectiveness. Hide processing, sewing, and shelter construction often required multiple people working together. Tasks were divided according to skill, strength, and experience. Some gathered raw materials, others prepared hides, while skilled artisans completed assembly. Shared responsibility ensured that everyone had adequate protection, reducing vulnerability and strengthening social bonds. Collaboration in clothing and shelter production was not only practical, but reinforced the social cohesion critical to surviving harsh winters. Innovation was continuous. Early humans refined techniques over time. Double-layered furs, water-resistant treatments, and specialized boots improved efficiency and comfort. Shelter designs evolved to incorporate better insulation, wind protection, and communal arrangements. These innovations reflected a feedback loop of observation, experimentation, and adaptation. Failures were instructive. Garments that froze, shelters that collapsed under snow, or improperly insulated sleeping areas provided lessons that informed future improvements. Winter survival demanded constant refinement of technology, skill, and strategy. Psychological comfort was intertwined with physical protection. Warm, well-constructed clothing and shelter provided a sense of security, reducing stress, fear, and fatigue. Confidence in one's gear allowed for more effective hunting, social interaction, and decision-making. The ability to endure cold conditions was not merely a matter of endurance. It was supported by carefully engineered protective systems that combined human ingenuity with natural resources. Survival in winter was a holistic endeavor, integrating physiology, engineering, and psychology. In conclusion, clothing and shelter were fundamental to winter survival, representing a fusion of observation, craftsmanship, and strategic thinking. Furs, hides, and insulated shelters created microenvironments that allowed humans to endure extreme cold, conserve energy, and maintain mobility. Fire complemented these adaptations, providing warmth and enhancing the effectiveness of protective technologies. Group cooperation and intergenerational knowledge transfer ensured that clothing and shelters met both practical and social needs. Through these innovations, early humans transformed the hostile winter landscape into a manageable environment, demonstrating adaptability, creativity, and resilience that would shape the trajectory of human survival for millennia. As winter receded and the snow began to melt, early humans reflected the culmination of months of endurance, adaptation, and resilience. The frozen months of the Ice Age were more than a seasonal challenge. They were a crucible in which survival skills, ingenuity, and social bonds were tested to their limits. Every aspect of daily life, from fire maintenance to water collection, hunting strategies, shelter construction, and social cooperation, was intertwined in a delicate balance. The legacy of winter survival lies not only in the ability to endure, but in the innovation, intelligence, and cultural development that these harsh conditions fostered. The physical adaptations that humans developed were remarkable. Clothing, shelter, and tool mastery allowed them to create microenvironments within the cold expanse, sustaining warmth, safety, and energy. The use of fire for both survival and ritual, combined with the ingenuity of toolmaking, enabled humans to manipulate their environment in ways that bridge the gap between vulnerability and capability. Every action, from crafting a spear to melting snow for water, was deliberate, informed by observation, trial, and collective experience. These innovations were not isolated solutions. They formed an integrated system that defined survival strategies and shaped early human evolution. Social cohesion proved equally vital. Families, clans, and larger groups relied on interdependence to endure the harshest months. Division of labor, resource sharing, and communication ensured that even the most vulnerable members, children, the elderly, and the injured, survived alongside skilled hunters and toolmakers. Winter reinforced the importance of cooperation, teaching lessons that extended beyond survival. Social organization, hierarchy, knowledge transfer, and emotional support became essential components of human resilience. The Ice Age was as much a social challenge as a physical one, highlighting the integral role of community in shaping our species. Predator encounters, seasonal migrations, and environmental hazards demanded constant vigilance and strategic thinking. Early humans learned to anticipate threats, plan hunting expeditions, and navigate frozen landscapes while minimizing risk. Fire, weapons, and coordinated group defense were deployed with intelligence, demonstrating an advanced understanding of cause and effect. Survival was not accidental. It was a product of careful observation, preparation, and continuous adaptation. The interplay between human agency and environmental pressures fostered a level of sophistication in problem-solving that laid the foundation for future technological and cultural advancements. Cultural practices, rituals, and belief systems played a subtle but critical role. Winter rituals provided structure, strengthened social bonds, and transmitted essential knowledge. Storytelling, symbolic artifacts, and communal ceremonies encoded environmental awareness, ethical hunting practices, and survival strategies, ensuring that knowledge persisted across generations. These cultural behaviors illustrate that human intelligence was not purely practical, but deeply intertwined with imagination, meaning-making, and social cohesion. Winter shaped not only survival techniques, but also the cultural and cognitive framework of our ancestors. Migration patterns reflected both practical necessity and strategic foresight, tracking animal herds, anticipating environmental changes, and maintaining access to water and shelter required careful planning and coordination. Groups moved as units, with roles assigned according to skill, strength, and knowledge. These journeys were not simple relocations. They were complex operations integrating observation, resource management, social cooperation, and risk mitigation. Winter migration highlighted the ability of early humans to adapt dynamically to environmental challenges, demonstrating foresight, resilience, and a capacity to thrive in extreme conditions. Psychological resilience emerged as a defining feature of winter survival. The mental demands of enduring long nights, scarce food, predators, and relentless cold were immense. Social cohesion, shared responsibility, and cultural rituals helped mitigate stress and maintain focus. Confidence in tools, clothing, shelter, and collective knowledge allowed humans to confront fear, conserve energy, and make strategic decisions. Winter survival required not only physical endurance, but emotional and cognitive strength, a testament to the multifaceted adaptability of our species. The cumulative knowledge gained during winter shaped future generations. Techniques for clothing, shelter construction, fire management, hunting, and water collection became encoded in cultural memory, ensuring continuity even as environmental conditions changed. This knowledge transfer created a foundation upon which later technological and social developments could build, from permanent settlements to agriculture and beyond. The winter months, with all their hardships, became a laboratory for innovation, experimentation, and cultural evolution, leaving a legacy that extends to the very core of human survival strategy. Winter survival also reinforced the value of observation and learning. Early humans became keen environmental scientists, noting patterns in animal behavior, seasonal shifts, snow and ice conditions, and predator movements. This systematic observation informed decision-making, improved efficiency, and reduced risk. It reflects an early form of empirical knowledge, demonstrating that human intelligence and culture co-evolved with environmental adaptation. The harshest conditions, paradoxically, were also the most instructive, shaping cognition and enhancing problem-solving skills that would serve humanity for millennia. In conclusion, the Ice Age winter was a defining arena for human evolution and resilience. It demanded a holistic approach to survival, integrating physical innovation, social cooperation, environmental intelligence, psychological fortitude, and cultural adaptation. Humans transformed vulnerability into capability, learning to harness fire, craft tools, design clothing and shelters, manage resources, navigate predators, and transmit knowledge across generations. Winter was not merely endured. It was strategically navigated, mastered, and woven into the cultural fabric of early humans. The legacy of these survival strategies is profound, revealing the ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience that define our species. By understanding how our ancestors thrived in the coldest months, We gain insight into the origins of human ingenuity, social complexity, and the enduring spirit that allowed humanity to conquer one of the most hostile environments on Earth.